There has been, letters or communications that were leaked out of confidential meetings with a sinister motive behind them. So in that, we then said, well, let's start talking about proportional power sharing. That we would rather walk away and be able to represent the voters that gave us 27.5%, almost 28%. The Secretary General says, oh, no, well, we've decided that, we cannot dilute our own positions. We have to stick to 7. And then we will then we'll also go with other parties and we'll give them whatever we're giving them. And that is it.
Join us in supporting the Springboks when they take on the All Blacks at Ellis Park on the 31st of August 2024. We will be hosting exclusive hospitality at the Ellis Park Arena. Our hospitality includes pre-match analysis by international rugby players, lunch, drinks, Category A tickets inside the stadium so that you can enjoy the game right there. After the match, we're going to have live music, more food, more drinks, exclusive parking. What more could you want? If you want to join us and bring any size group, get more information below this video. Welcome to the State of the Nation, brought to you by Pace Car Rental. Please go get a discount on your car rental. Use our special code of SONA, S-O-N-A, to ensure that when you rent a car, you get a discount because you watch the State of the Nation, the best news and political commentary platform in South Africa. Now, as we all know, we've been following the elections really closely. No party got an outright majority. We all know there were deep and dark discussions between the ANC and most especially the second biggest party in the election being the Democratic Alliance. A government of national unity was negotiated. It then seemed to be crashing towards the rocks, pulled out at the last minute. Suddenly everybody found each other, and we've reported quite closely as finally a government of national unity was formed with a cabinet that included many cabinet ministers from other parties and many deputies and other office bearers. Part of that discussion, also because the recent elections weren't just about the general election for national government, was also around the provinces, the provincial governments, because we voted for both. And there was definitely going to be an issue in KwaZulu-Natal and in Gauteng. And in both of those provinces, no one party got a majority. In KwaZulu-Natal, there was an alliance that was cobbled together very quickly between the ANC, the Democratic Alliance, the IFP, and dragging the National Freedom Party, yes, they do still exist with their one seat in KZN, in denying MK the opportunity, Mkhonto weSizwe the opportunity of running KwaZulu-Natal. That was all done on the back of an agreement that was reached prior to the election of the president, and that set off a whole chain of events. And now I'm sketching a long background, but I think it's important that we understand that there was an agreement in place saying we'll vote so long because there were certain deadlines on votes for president, there were certain deadlines on votes for provincial leaders. The voting was done before the details were finalized. Another part of the detail, and probably most contentiously, was Gauteng, where the ANC, with 34% of the vote, well below receiving a majority. The Democratic Alliance got 28%, and EFF, if I'm not mistaken, got 11%, a few other parties that got representation. Going into the government of national unity with with just a slight majority, the ANC, their head, Panyaza Lesufi, got elected as Gauteng leader, and he had the prerogative of pulling together the provincial government the government of provincial unity, I think is the correct term. And what should have happened is representation of all of the parties that were part of the coalition represented in the provincial terms. Now, there's been a lot of backwards and forwards as to who shafted who. But as we sit here, just just after an announcement of the Cabinet of Provincial Unity, the Democratic Party, the Democratic Alliance has walked away from those discussions and has no leadership within the Gauteng leadership cabal. And joining me today is Gauteng leader Democratic Alliance leader in Gauteng, Solly Msimanga. Solly, I wish you were talking in better terms, but you're the man caught in the middle, and I hope I've sketched the story properly, because I think it's important that we understand that it's not just about what's going on here in Gauteng. It's also about a whole agreement put in place nationally. Now, here we sit. Panyaza Lesufi announced, firstly makes an offer to the Democratic Alliance, which you felt wasn't in the spirit of the agreement. Did make an offer to you for some, I think the term, the technical term is bullshit posts in the cabinet, in the provincial cabinet, which you then declined, and DA has walked away.
Well, thank you very much, and good day to you, Mike, and to the viewers as well. I think it is important to take a couple of steps back and start off where we were right at the beginning. So, in the beginning, there was, after the elections, the mood was jovial to then say, well, for the first time in 70 years, if you were to think about it, 70 years, because you're looking at the 30 years of the ANC rule, and then you have to go further backwards and then say there was a national party that actually then governed on its own for 40 years before that. So for the first time in 70 years, South Africa got into a stage where no one party could run this government on its own. There was that 1994 euphoria, if you like, where people were like, oh, well, now we can restart again, building that nation that is eager to, rise from the ashes and build again. And we caught that as well. At a national level, there was an engagement. John and Cyril Ramaphosa were the first to then start, talking and signing into what we will then, do going forward, which then morphed into a number of things, including what now is known as the Statement of Intention. Because there's always been that agreement that there's so much that we now need to then do. It's not an issue of how do you just form a government now, but also how do you then bring society, civil society, and how do you bring South Africans along in the journey of rebuilding? So that is what has transpired in that instance. But what also happened at that time was that at a provincial level, we realized that after the elections, we were finding ourselves, within a 6.5% difference between the ANC and ourselves. We then wanted to then say, how do we then form a government? We engaged the ANC, or they engaged us, and said, well, look, you're the biggest, second biggest party after us. None of us have gotten anywhere past 35% each. What do we do, to ensure that we're able to then put a government together? So in that, we then said, well, let's start talking about proportional power sharing. Because if you don't have power, I don't have power, then therefore it means that if we want to build a base, it then needs to build around the proportionality. And that is the spirit in which, from the DA perspective, we were going into this thing. And we said, we must also respect the views and the wishes of the voters. That means that all these other parties must find an expression one way or the other in terms of how we work. And if we are to use the spirit from a national level, obviously that needs to then flow into what we're doing in Gauteng. Initially, that was, the attitude from all of us. And I thought, well, we're off to a good start. There were discussions in KZN, obviously, because KZN was the one that was hurrying to then get going. They were able to then quickly, put a government together, elect, the premier there, and the premier was able to then put around the team together. They were able to then get, the MECs in that particular space. I'm saying all of this so that you understand why we ended up getting to a point where we walk away. So here in Gauteng, we were following the same principles that had been followed in KZN and later followed in the national level. And then we thought the principle that were, by the way, proposed by the ANC of proportional representation at a provincial level and, somewhat at a national level here, we can then also adopt it here at a province in Gauteng. Then the ANC decided to then change. No, we don't want that. We don't want proportional representation. We'll tell you what we're offering you. Not even talking about, the principle of how do we, because we said, let's not talk about numbers first. Let's deal with the principles. So are we dealing with the principle of proportionality, number one? Are we dealing with the principle of saying when there is, a coalition or a partnership or any kind of formation where two organizations or two people get together, there's bound to be clashes at some point. How do we deal with squabbles when they do arise? Let's set all these things down so that we don't have a situation where down the line there's motions of no confidence that are brought up, there's this, there's that. Let's iron all these things out. And then we can talk about the numbers. We got to the numbers, and then they say, no, that we're offering you 2 positions. We said that's madness.
Let's be clear, there's 10 positions.
There's 11
There's
positions.
10 posts plus a leader.
Plus the leader in the cabinet. So you're having 11 positions in the cabinet. We said, no, that's not what we will do. What we were prepared to do, because we wanted, in the true spirit of forming a government that works, we said the DA is willing to go as low, or the lowest being 3 positions, on the basis that you introduce 2 or 3 other parties as well. So you can't have the 7 to yourself. We will take 3, and the document is there, and Panyaza was busy flaunting the document, but it's not telling everybody what the document said and what were the contents of that document. So they said, no, we'll take 3, and then we will take 7, and then we'll decide what do we want to do. Then, so they didn't sign that deal that we proposed to them. Then we said, okay, fine. Then we're not going to find each other. Then there was a to and fro, and then we then said, okay, what we will do is then we will up ourselves 1, so we'll get to 4. You can introduce 1 if you want to introduce 1. So it will be 5. It will be 5, 4, 1, and then plus the premier, so that's 11. And then they said, no, that is still not sufficient. Then they came up with an alternative, and they said, no, we actually now revised it down. We want to give you 1. So they moved from 2. Now they want to give us 1. And we said, nah, this is not good enough. We're walking away. Then they said, no, we're going back to 3. But then don't ask us about the portfolios. Just give us names and we'll decide what portfolios that we'll give you. And we said, that's absolute nonsense. We're not going to do that. We need to know that when we're going into this, we need to know what portfolio we're going to go into, whether those portfolios are actually then meaningful portfolios, and will we be able to then do anything significant in those portfolios? Because it's not about Msimanga being driven around in a BMW with blue lights. It's about what I said to the people of Gauteng. I said on this platform, and I told you what I wanted to do when we in Gauteng. So I've made promises to the people of Gauteng, and we need to make sure that we deliver on those promises. Whether we're doing it from a Department of Health perspective, a Department of Education perspective, a social development perspective, whatever portfolio, but it has to be a meaningful portfolio. So they didn't want that, and I think the results speak for themselves. Look at how these positions have now been hollowed.
Yeah, look, to anybody who hasn't followed it as closely as you should, they did manage to now install a position each for the IFP, the Patriotic Alliance, and Rise Mzansi. Those 3 portfolios out of 10 manage 5% of the budget, and
no,
95%.
3%.
3% of the budget.
Yeah.
Okay, so the other 7 portfolios that the ANC manage, well, I suppose 8, because some of the important functions have been put with the leader, provincial leader, is 97% of the budget. So quite clearly, one position isn't as equivalent to another. So here you go. Let me start off with one concern that I have, is that the statement was made that you'd rather walk away and vote with your conscience.
No. The statement was made that we would rather walk away and be able to represent the voters that gave us 27.5%, almost 28%, a chance of us truly representing them. Because if we are just going to be co-opted into government, you are now just going to be a rubber stamp of the ANC. and you're looking at if you look at the what do you call it? If you look at the cabinet, nothing has changed, actually.
Yeah.
The same people, one or two have just changed positions, but all of them are still there. So it's going to be the same thing. And you are now being co-opted in useless portfolios. You don't have a word or you don't have a voice. And if you were to then say, I'm objecting to this, they will put it into a cabinet vote. You will always be outvoted in that particular instance. And therefore, you'll find yourself, rubber stamping their decisions. And then the same people that voted for us are going to blame us and say, but you are part of government, without understanding what is happening.
But wouldn't the same thing have applied even if you had 3 of the top portfolios?
No, but this is why I said you have 3 and you introduce other political parties. So you don't have the ANC then controlling 7 portfolios. You would have the ANC if we had 3 and you had 3 other parties that are coming in. So you're having 6 of these other parties coming in, and then you have the ANC at 5. So that would have really meant that you can actually then use those levers to effect the change that you would wanted to effect.
Now, Solly, there's a whole lot of people that are lining up. You've lost this battle on Twitter. We know that because, the Panyaza Lesufi and the EFF win every election on Twitter. But have you not been seriously outmaneuvered by Panyaza Lesufi? You were stupid enough to vote him in as the leader on the basis that they were going to operate fairly. And in possibly the most unsurprising move ever, he hasn't stuck to the spirit of the agreement, never mind the agreement itself.
Well, I don't know if you were to think about it and think that is the end of it. I think for me that would be a little bit pedestrian to think that way or to put it that way. There's quite a lot of things that needs to happen. One is that there are budgets that needs to be passed. They don't have a majority government. They have a minority government. So you can now say you've won the battle, but the war is still out there. You have reports that needs to then pass. You have quite a number of people that are sitting on the opposition that are much more than the people that are sitting in government. So you must then ask yourself who is really, lost out here. Because you've lost out on being able to then build a government that could have really brought about the change. You have lost on a government that could have been stable for 5 years and be able to then pass budgets, be able to then bring reforms into government. You have lost out on the ability to then build the trust or rebuild the trust with the people of Gauteng. Because what they've done now, you can go onto social media, you can go onto the media space. It has been exposed that, this has just been about the ANC's own internal battles. Because that's what it's all about. And look at where the concentration of even the power within the departments is. Lebogang Maile on one end, Panyaza Lesufi on the other end, and the people that are linked up to them, and the positions that are now either now being held in the ministers, in the premier's office, or in the Department of Finance, or in Treasury with Lebogang Maile as being the MEC for Finance. So you can see all these things now beginning to also now play themselves out, and the general public are picking that out. So I don't think we've lost. We have actually proven to the people of Gauteng, to the people of South Africa, that we have a backbone, that we can be trusted to say if we are going to do something, we will do it to the latter. And if it is people that are going to then change their tone or do something different, then we'll be the first to then say, I'm sorry, this is not what we had on the table. We are not going to honor that.
But would you have been able to say that if you were inside the cabinet?
Would we be?
Would you have been able to take these principled positions if you were inside cabinet?
But this is why we said we're not signing anything, we're not agreeing to anything until these principles have been agreed on. So it wouldn't have happened that we wouldn't be in cabinet if these principles hadn't been agreed on. So you agree that there's principles that we have to operate under, and then we agree that we can have a partnership. It's like marriage. I cannot propose, to marry you and then you marry me without understanding where we're going to live, what are we going to do? Are we going to have children? Are we not going to have children? Are we going to go live in Johannesburg, or we're going to live in Pretoria? These are things that you need to then get outright and say, well, if we are going to do this thing going forward, these are the things that we have to agree up front about, and then I'm willing to then commit. If you're not willing to then talk about these things, then I'm sorry, I cannot commit to this.
Yeah, and just to be clear to everybody watching this, Solly and I have decided to get married. but we decided to live in Cape Town because it doesn't look like any city in Gauteng is worth living in, and we're not going to have any children, Swali. But anyway, let's get back to the matter at hand. One can argue that you raised a very important issue of how does the government run? How do you get budgets passed, etc.? How do you get a majority vote?
Yeah.
Well, we do know that Panyaza Lesufi is very, very, very friendly with EFF and Mkhonto weSizwe. And together, those three parties will have a majority, and they will pass a budget. They will pass everything, even though they are not represented, because it will make you look particularly bad, isn't it?
Well, look, I mean, if they do pass the budget, they've said at a national level that they're not interested. So they will have to go back and then explain how are they passing the budgets. And by the way, I must state it very clear. We are not going to stop the passing of budgets just for the sake of stopping the passing of budgets. We're not petty politicians. The DA is not a petty party. We are going to influence government in any way that we can. If it means that we can then get the things that we want to see implemented in the same budgets, we'll support the budget. If we can see programs in safety and security, programs in the health, programs in education, programs in human settlement, programs in infrastructure development, programs that are aimed at assisting our municipalities come out of the nonsense that they find themselves in, we will support those. But if the converse is true, that, there is now chaos and it's the continuation of what has been, then believe you me, we will not only vote against those, but we'll lobby others, including the other parties that we might not agree with. Because at the core of everything should be, is this serving the people of Gauteng? Is this serving the people of South Africa? And if our agreement can be that we need to serve the people of South Africa and the people of Gauteng in particular, then we should be able to then say, this budget is not talking to serving the people. This budget is not going to address the issue of crime in Gauteng. This budget is not going to fix the infrastructure problems that we have. And if parties can then say, ideologically, we might be worlds apart, but if we can agree that we can use our pressure on government to get the reforms that we want, then we'll do that. So it's not a complete loss.
Solly, it seems like all of Panyaza Lesufi's actions didn't just get the approval, but actually got the support and the urging of the Secretary General Fikile Mbalula.
No, not the case.
Well, that's what he was all over the media saying, just appoint your cabinet.
Yeah, well, that is not the case, because twice Fikile Mbalula had called Panyaza and told him, don't go ahead, twice. And the last time that happened, Fikile Mbalula said, well, look, I mean, I don't have a choice here because you guys are stuck. And therefore, we will allow you to do what needs to be done. That's why he said in that conversation, we are not closing the door. Go ahead, because you're saying you have pressures of announcing the cabinet. Go ahead, but still engage. And I'm saying to you, and I'm putting to you on record, we still are willing to engage. But we're not willing to engage just for the sake of, begging. We're not coming with a begging bowl and wanting to sit and say, oh, well, we're sorry we didn't come in. No, we're saying if you're serious about running a government that will not have the risks going forward of the things that I've mentioned earlier on, if you're serious about ensuring that they have the longevity and you want to bring the reforms that I spoke to, we're still willing to then engage and talk to you.
Now, Solly, do you think that this particular spat, which, as a long-suffering citizen of Johannesburg, which is in Gauteng, where I see no service delivery either in Johannesburg or in Gauteng, this is obviously a heartbreaking another step backwards for what used to be the financial capital of South Africa, which nobody seems to give a damn about, certainly not in the political sense. Is this telling us more about the ANC or the DA? Because obviously there's been a lot of fingers pointed at the DA to say, Helen Zille, really difficult to deal with. There's been, the media have jumped all over this one, saying, the DA's demands were too great. Obviously, the dog whistles from President Cyril Ramaphosa, the shafting of the DA at national level, which we've spoken at length to, because one sees the agreements which were leaked. Right? We know who's operating in bad faith. But the question is here, Does the DA have a few questions to answer?
Well, it depends on what you mean. Does the DA have a few questions to answer? I think the first thing that we must acknowledge is that we're living in a very interesting time where AI, artificial intelligence, can generate just about anything. Voice notes, Msimanga can be speaking here, somebody's recording my voice, and then it changes, and then a statement is made, it's coming out in my voice, or even an actual video, or even letters. And we've seen quite a number of those. And that has been used in the media space, in the social media space at least, to try and peddle a particular direction, right? So that is the first thing that you need to then take into consideration about what has transpired in the last while.
So are you saying that some falsification of proof has actually circulated?
That's it, and we can prove a number of these things. The second thing is that there has been, letters or communications that were leaked out of confidential meetings with a sinister motive behind them. You write to me and say, please put it in writing what your wishes are. Now, when I put my wishes, doesn't necessarily mean that there are demands from me on you. You asked me to put my wishes. So if you said, there's a cabinet that we want to put, please tell us what positions you would want. And I write to you and say, these are the positions I would like to have, and this is the motivation why I would like to have those. Am I being bullied? Am I being a bully, or am I being bossy? No. You ask me, I'm responding. And part of negotiation is that once you have read what I've written, and you can then come back and say, well, I can agree to this, I cannot agree to that. And if I don't agree to this, here's the alternative. That's how you engage in good spirit. But we didn't even get to that stage in Gauteng, by the way. In Gauteng, it was, we'll give you one. No, we don't. We'll give you two. Okay, if you take three, just give us names, and then we'll find out when the premier makes the announcement. That was the engagement that we have. So when you say the DA has something to answer, the question is, what is the question that the DA must be answering to? Because the DA, and one of the things that I appreciate about my organization is that everything that we do, there's a paper trail to it. I can give you a paper trail of the first meeting. I can give you a paper trail of, the second meeting. I can give you recordings of the third meeting. I can give you, letters back and forth that have taken place, because we want to make sure that should anybody question our word, we can then bring a trail that says, but here's what we've said. Here's what has happened.
Solly, behind this, there's obviously a strong motivation. Because, quite clearly it was obvious. The numbers, can't be disputed. The ANC does not have an outright majority. What is actually at play here? Why do we have a country where a coalition, GNU, call it what you will, this arrangement that was discussed? Why has Gauteng ANC been so intransigent about this issue?
Because there's an element of defiance from the ANC in Gauteng.
Defiance to who?
Defiance to their own to their own national structures. Defiance to what the mood of the country is at.
So is this in defiance against President Cyril Ramaphosa?
You can deduct it as that. Why would KZN use a principle, national use a principle, and then when it comes to Gauteng, that same principle doesn't apply? You should ask yourself, while we have applied the same principle in KZN, in Gauteng, and by the way, in Gauteng as well from our angle, and also at the national level. By the way, if we were not even going to apply the principle that has been applied everywhere, we should now be demanding that the DA pull out of the national agreement or pull out of the provincial agreement in KZN. We're not doing that because we respect that there was something bigger than us here. There's something bigger that started somewhere to then say, we now need to rebuild South Africa as a whole. And then other provinces are part of that. Why should Gauteng then, from a DA perspective, pull out of that? This is why we are saying those that are doing that are themselves perhaps trying to send a message to their own internal structures, but it's for them to respond, not to for me to answer.
Do you think that you weren't, once again, and I don't want to go and victim blame here, but do you think you are being naive by not negotiating this deal at simultaneously as those other deals were in play?
Those
should this deal not have been concomitant, to use Cyril's favorite word?
These deals were done similarly. But what happened is that the Gauteng one was stalling. I mean, I'll tell you what happened. On the 14th, when on the 14th of June, when Panyaza was to be elected, inaugurated, we had agreed on the morning, what was going to happen. Then we presented the document that Panyaza was showing on TV yesterday. Say, hey, this is what the DA said. This is the agreement that they want. And they asked us to then change that document. They said to us, no, you said you are willing to take 3 positions, and we are taking 7, and we'll give other political parties positions. But we don't want you to put that in writing. We said, no. We are saying 3 for the DA on the basis that you include other political parties into this, and not only anywhere in government, into the cabinet. So we were very clear of what we wanted to see in that. And that was agreed upon. And they said, okay, we will say the Secretary General has the authority to sign anything at a provincial level. I said I have the authority to sign, or even my chairperson will be able to then sign. Let's get the deal going. They said, no, we're getting the deal going. After we elected Panyaza Lesufi, after we elected Morakani Musupie, and Refilo Nseke was elected, we were supposed to meet that same Friday afternoon. The ANC was nowhere to be found after those initial conversations. I called. They said, no, we'll come back. Panyaza's got media interviews. There's, this interest and that interest that, the public, he needs to go show face. It's like, okay, I respect that. I thought we were going to meet on the Saturday. Saturday, they didn't show. Sunday, they didn't show. Monday, they didn't show. Tuesday, no show. Wednesday, at the inauguration of the president, that's when we met them. And I said, guys, this is uncalled for. We have a short space in which to iron out these principles and iron out all these issues so that we're able to then finalize and you can get to then appointing a cabinet. That Wednesday afternoon, we met, and then we agreed that, no, we will then have a chat. Because he wanted to make an announcement then by the Friday or the Saturday. And lo and behold, then I get a letter to then say, we're sticking to what you said initially to us, and that is you're taking 3 positions and we're taking 7. I said, no, that's not what we said. We said we're taking 3. You can take up to 7 on the basis that in that 7, other parties must be accommodated. And then they said, no, then we're revising it back. Then we are only giving you 1. That's when it started then with a ping pong. Then they said they were going to announce without us on the Friday. Then we said, okay, fine, go ahead and announce without us. We then wrote to our national team and said, guys, this is what we've done. This was the spirit. They went and did their own thing. Therefore, please note that from a Gauteng perspective, we are pulling out from the DA. They wrote to Fikile Mbalula, who then said, guys, no, you have to then go back to the table and engage. We agreed, fine. They met us the following week, and an insult of a proposal was put on the table. We have revised everything, not even in writing. We've revised everything. Lebha Maile was even reading in his phone. We'll offer you 1 MEC position, we'll offer you 2 chairpersons' portfolios, and that's it. And I said, you don't give us anything. We are here because we understand that we are not co-opted by you. We have to form a government that works, because that's what we promised the people out there. So if we're thinking that we're coming here with a begging bowl, we're not going to do that. And if you think I'm lying, I have it on record. Then we said, okay, we are saying, let's go back to the proportionality. They said, no, we can't have proportionality. Then it's killing us because, our structures, and we have alliances, we have this, we have that, we have that. We said, okay, that's fine. We cannot be dragged into that. But our proposals still stand. We want 4. If you're going to if you're not going to accommodate other parties, you're only going to accommodate 1. We can go less if you're going to accommodate more. And then they said to us, no, it's fine. We heard you. We will go and consult our provincial executive committee and come back to you. We'll come back to you by, the next day. Nothing happened. Then they called another meeting. We went into another meeting that Panyaza called at 10 o'clock on Monday. Panyaza calls a meeting at 10 o'clock or at 12 o'clock, but he calls me at 10 o'clock. I said, okay, fine. I had my own provincial executive meeting. I left my own provincial executive committee meeting. We agended. I asked Fred Nell to join me. We went across the province to go meet up with Panyaza. We get there. It's 2 and 2. It's me and Fred Nell. It's Panyaza and the Secretary General, the provincial secretary. They asked us what is the proposal. We gave them the proposal to then say we want 4-1-5 if that's what you want, but we cannot go less if you're not going less yourself, because then it dilutes that dynamic that we were talking to. Then they said, okay, it's fine, we hear you. Please allow us to go in and consult our PEC. We'll come back to you at 4 o'clock. Because Panyaza says he wants to then finalize and make the announcement. 4 o'clock comes and goes. 5 o'clock comes and goes. 5:30, there's a media alert that says 7 o'clock, there's a cabinet announcement that is taking place. I take my phone and call Panyaza and say, but what is this? I thought we were supposed to be meeting. No, the Secretary General will call you. I call the Secretary General. The Secretary General says, oh, no, well, we've decided that, we cannot dilute our own positions. We have to stick to 7. And then we will then we'll also go with other parties and we'll give them whatever we're giving them. And that is it.
Okay, can we talk about some of those other parties?
Yeah.
We fully understand the Patriotic Alliance are in the ANC's camp. I've had Gauteng McKenzie on here many times, and I said to him, you always talk about how bad the ANC is, but yet you always vote with them. So we understand where their bread is buttered.
Gauteng will never buy Za when his pocket is concerned.
I know. So let's understand that they are pretty much in the pocket of the ANC, as is Rise Mzansi, whose policies are indistinguishable from those of the ANC. So it makes perfectly good sense to me. Both of those parties got one of the seats. But there's a third party that took up a seat, and that was the IFP. Now, isn't the IFP meant to be your sort of big mate in this? But your brother in arms?
Yeah, that is a conversation that we're still going to have with the IFP at a national level and also in KZN. Because this is not the first time. The IFP, even in the previous elections, you must remember that ANC was in majority by only 1 here. They co-opted the IFP and the ACDP by giving them the chairperson's portfolios, and they were always then voting with the ANC. And we were given an assurance that, they will not move if the DA is not moving in Gauteng while we were engaging. This is why, and I urge you to go and look at the media conference that we had with Helen Zille the day before the announcements were finally made. Helen said that part of what we were arguing was that there's no way you can leave the IFP out, and think that the DA will come in because of the engagements and the initial agreement that has been reached at the national level and at the provincial level. So we always were of the impression that the IFP was moving with us. On the day of the announcement, I called the IFP gentleman. I said, have you been called? Has an offer been made to you? His answer to me was, no, there's no offer that is made to me. Lo and behold, 8 o'clock, he's sitting in front of the cameras. He's been sworn in as an MEC. Well, am I duped? You can answer that for yourself.
Solly, why are they, if all your stories, and I have no reason to doubt what you're saying, you're prepared to show us all the proof, why are so many people in Gauteng prepared to line up against you and the DA?
Well, who's lining up against us?
Well, I mean, we've seen, in short order, the ANC, the EFF, the Patriotic Alliance, now the IFP.
We don't have any issues with the EFF.
Yeah, but I'm saying, they were part of they kicked you out of Joburg. They kicked you out of Kuruleni.
Because they wanted to go in there.
Right.
So I think you need to, wait, Mike, you need to put these things into perspective. They wanted to get a position. They thought that they were going to get a municipality. There was an agreement initially that if ANC took Johannesburg, they were going to take a Kuruleni. That relationship somehow didn't work as they thought that it would. This is why, of late, they ended up, kicking out even their finance MMC, and who happens to be the most senior person in the party in Gauteng of the EFF. And the relationship had soured there. So I don't think that it has been a fight with us. But if it's a fight with the DA from any other party because the DA is standing on principle, then I don't mind people fighting me on that. Because if I say to you, this is my word, If I say that, this is my word. Believe in me, this is what I'll carry. And I've said this to you before, even on the interview, that I will not want to move a motion of no confidence in Johannesburg if we don't have a plan of what we're going to do to rescue Johannesburg. It's not an issue of just, removing something because it's expedient to do so. For me, if we are going to have a principle of why we're doing something, let's stick to that principle. I will stick to it. If your principles changes depending on who you're talking to, sorry, mine are not going to change. Mine will be what they are.
Solly, you raised the issue of the cities. The metros are quite frankly a bit of a, once again, I'm going to absolutely say it's an absolute mess. All three of the metros, including Tshwane, which we know that you now govern with almost a multi-party charter type of arrangement, right? And which could be in question now because that thing has been dissolved. Do us wonderful citizens of Gauteng have more instability to look forward to in the cities?
Not in Tshwane, certainly, because there was Tshwane was the coalition in Tshwane was formed way before the multi-party charter, the Moonshot Pact, was put together. So there was already an agreement that is.
So that's going to hold.
That is holding.
There's two other coalitions which govern, one in Johannesburg, one in Ekurhuleni, both of which you're out of. Is anything going to change there? Because now you've got parties, you've got, for example, the EFF in coalition with the ANC in both of those cases. And the EFF was, despite Marshall Dlamini's groveling letter, please pick me, I'll marry you, I'll do everything, we'll move to Cape Town together, next door to us. I mean, I must admit, in my life, I've never seen such a letter of desperation. But in any case, you do have an existing relationship. Very cozy relationship. Kenny Kunene managing all the money. That can't be ultimately.
Are you talking about us or you're talking about the ANC?
No, I'm talking about the current one.
Okay, all right.
But how do those coalitions hold?
So we were supposed to then engage on the issue of what local governments look like going forward. And this is something that you would remember what Cyril Ramaphosa or President Ramaphosa had to say, and the leaders of other political parties, was that we're going to need to then, once we talk about a government of national unity, the second step was to then have a national dialogue. I'm sure you would have remembered that conversation to then say there will be a national dialogue. Part of the national dialogue would have also included or will also include conversation with civil society, with normal Joe Soap, and business and CBOs and all of that, so that you're able to then say, how does government at a national level, at a provincial level, at a local level then work and coexist and prosper together? So the talk about what will happen at a municipal level is actually then hinging on these things that are taking place or to take place. So it's not as if now that you're now talking about how you form a government at a provincial level, then it hinges or it then automatically marries what is happening in Ekurhuleni, what is happening at in Tshwane or in Johannesburg. No, that in our understanding was that all these things will come together, and it will require more than only the parties that are in the national coalition or in the national government or government of national unity. So that is our understanding of how these things were to then start rolling themselves out.
Smells like you're getting played again.
How do you get played if you're going to engage residents?
Because you're playing chess and they're playing checkers and they're beating you every time. I'm saying they're getting their hands on the levers of power, right? And they're making it out like it's your fault. So I'm just saying,
it's fine. Well, you see, one thing I love about what is happening, is that the DA consistently proves its principled approach. And this is why it's not dropping in support. This is why its support is holding or even growing. Are the other parties able to say the same? No. So if the ANC thinks that it's playing us, 2026 is just around the corner. Let's see what happens. 2029 will come, then they will be obliterated from that.
Okay. Solly, I want to just close off by asking a question which, the first thought that came to my mind was that there are some potentially massive scandals on a provincial level. We know that over 400 million rand was spent on fogging classrooms when pupils weren't allowed to even attend school during COVID.
427.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And that hasn't been discussed yet. I don't know if that's still in play. A massive amount of money was stolen from Tembisa Hospital, which cost Betrayal Dear Karan her life, right, where she was absolutely assassinated.
Yes.
That hasn't been played out, and even Life Isidameni has been sort of swept under the carpet. Do you think that there was a direct threat to those cases suddenly getting a bit of, instead of getting the sort of government protection that it's got so far, where nobody seems to want to investigate these things or finalize these things?
Well, I think there has been an attempt to try and hold some of the reports back. We have been asking in the 6th administration about some of the reports, and you mentioned a few. I mean, I can go even further. I can tell you,
we're going to run out of time.
500 million about the Anglo Ashanti Hospital. I can tell you about the Bank of Lisbon reports. I can tell you about the Alexander Renewal Project. I can tell you about the Everton Renewal Project, among so many others. So we didn't go, even if we were to go into a government, we were not going to have this buried. We want to see what has happened. We want an investigation done. We want the provincial state capture to take place. And this is what we were intending to do. And this is what we're still intending to do. And we will reach out to other political parties as well and say, now those that used to use their majority don't have the majority. If you want to get to the bottom of it, support us in terms of, asking for these reports, asking for a lifestyle audit to be conducted, asking and using our numbers to vote for some of these things to be, exposed. And if we can do that and get it right, then we should be able to then, be an effective organization in the legislature.
Well, Solly, thank you so much for making the time to come here. I don't know, there's many people watching us that live in Gauteng. This is hardly paradise. The governance has been shocking. If you are a citizen of any of the metros, they are disgusting. We're hemorrhaging business, we're hemorrhaging people, and the quality of our life has diminished badly as we continue to have these backwards and forwards between the major party. I would like to put out an absolute challenge to Panyaza Lesufi or anybody on his executive to write a reply. Come and sit here. Come and tell us exactly how Solly Msimanga is lying. Let's prove him to be the liar that you say that he is. Panyaza Lesufi, you've been ducking me for ages. Come and sit here and explain to Gauteng why you have excluded the partner that you are meant to include. Come and tell us how bad they have negotiated and the bad faith that they have tried. I've tried to contact Sizwe Pamla, who's spoken to me once or twice, but we never seem to get it together. But I'm putting out an open invitation to any of the parties, to the ANC, to the Patriotic Alliance, to the IFP who are in coalition, to Rise Mzansi. Please come and sit here and explain where Solly Msimanga is lying and what he has got wrong, and we will highlight it on the State of the Nation, because these are the issues that most South African citizens want answered. So the challenge is out there. To anybody who knows them, please pass this on, but the seat is open. I'll clear my diary, come and sit down and explain to us what a liar Solly Msimanga is, so that we can get it clear and we can highlight that on the State of the Nation. But Solly, thank you so much for coming in. To everybody that's joined us, we're going to keep on with this very closely. Use Pace Car Rental, like and subscribe, State of the Nation. We'll see you again soon.